Saturday people, how are you all doing? Welcome back to a new video. So with there being only 8 games left of the championship season, I've gone ahead and predicted all of the remaining fixtures, and that has then led to me predicting the full table. So we're going to take a look at it together, and there's a couple of interesting ones in there. So without any further hesitation, let's get right into this. So we're going to start from the bottom and work our way up to the top. Starting with rock bottom of the championship, I have Luton Town. They currently sit 5 points adrift, so they by all means can still stay up, but based on the run-in that they have for the last 8 games, I think the damage has already been done. They did register a 1-1 draw with Preston on the opening day, but with the run-in that they have, they've got quite a lot of the promotion chasers still to play, the likes of Leeds, Blackburn and Swansea, and also some all-important games at the bottom, the likes of Hull and Barnsley. Those are must-win games, but for me, I think the damage is already done. Obviously, they do have Nathan Jones back, who obviously with his previous success with Luton potentially could keep them up, but in my opinion I think the damage has already been done and I think Luton will be going down. The same can also be said for Barnsley. I've got them in 23rd based off my score predictions. Again, like Luton, I think the damage is already done. They are only 4 points from safety, so by all means they can do it, and they did actually come back to football with a 1-0 victory over QPR, which I was quite surprised with actually. I didn't expect them to get the 3 points there, but again, like Luton, they have a few teams at the bottom. They still have to play Luton, they've got to play Stoke and also Wigan, but other than those games, the rest of their games are against the promotion chasers. Forest, Blackburn, Millwall, Brentford and Leeds are all of the sides Barnsley have to play. So for me, I think with Luton they've got an even tougher run-in, but based off their win off QPR, they could come back strong. They could come back after the break and really have a decent go at trying to survive. But me personally, I think that their run-in is too tough. The likes of Leeds and Brentford and Forest, I'm expecting them to give them absolute batterings. Like Luton, it's not going to be enough, and I think they're going to go straight back down to League One. And occupying the final relegation spot is Hull City. So I've predicted the current bottom 3 to go down, and I just think that all these 3 sides just haven't done enough, and I don't think they're going to do enough. And as for Hull City, these guys are in trouble. Grant McCann is under such increasing pressure week in and week out, but looking at their squad and looking at the running that they have and the way that they've been performing recently, I just cannot see them doing anything realistically good. They've lost quite a lot of players through players refusing to play, like Eric Lehigh and Maddison and Stephen Kingsley and Jackson Irvine. Most of those players expecting to make an impact. And of course, after their next match, which is against Birmingham City, a game that, as you can see from my scores, I've not predicted them to win, they will lose Malik Wilkes, who against Charlton was one of their biggest threats, albeit he didn't do much. He was one of their biggest threats. You take him out of the team, and McCann just really doesn't have a lot of quality to work with. Against Charlton, they had decent chances inside the first 10 minutes, but their end product was nowhere. They literally couldn't hit a barn door, couldn't swing across in the box to save their lives. I just can't see them doing anything, and as you can see on your screen through the scores, I've only predicted Hull to win one of their remaining 8 games. I predicted them to get a 2-1 win over Luton, which I think will end their streak of bad form, but I just can't see them doing anything. They've got to play Birmingham, they've got to play West Brom, who I think will teach them a lesson. And as you can see by the final table, Hull go down 7 points away from safety. So I'm predicting the bottom 3 to drift away quite a lot from the rest of the field. I feel like the championship is going to be a lot closer than that. It's definitely going to be a lot closer than that. But for me, Hull, Barnsley and Luton, I can't see them doing anything, especially Hull. And to be honest, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they slip even further, and even if Barnsley and Luton overtake them. And now we move on to the rest of the table. The teams just about surviving. In 21st on 51 points, 7 points clear, is my team, Charlton Athletic. I think most championship fans will be in agreement saying that the current bottom 3 are likely to go down. I think that Charlton will just be clear. I think we've done enough. And as you can see from my predictions, they're very optimistic predictions, and many people will say quite biased, but I don't care. I think that after the restart, it's come at a good time for Charlton really, because we've got our players back. Yes, we don't have Lyle Taylor, but against Hull we proved that we can do it without him. Defensively, absolutely superb. We took our chance when it mattered. We do need a little bit more creativity going forward though, but we can work on that as the weeks go by. As you can see from my predictions for the scores, I've predicted us to beat QPR 2-1, who of course did lose to Barnsley. I have predicted sides like Brentford and Leeds to give us beatings. I think they'll beat us 3-1, both of them. I also think we'll lose to Birmingham 2-1. I feel like they'll be quite a tough side to beat, and I've predicted 1-1 draws with Wigan and Reading. So overall, 2 wins, 3 draws and 3 defeats based off the scores that I've predicted elsewhere is enough to keep Charlton up, and quite emphatically, it has to be said. But I think many Championship fans will be in agreement that Luton, Barnsley and Hull will be going down, and Charlton will just do enough to survive. I don't think we'll finish 7 points clear. I don't think we'll pull away that far. Finishing 20th and level on points with Charlton is Stoke City. Like most of the teams at the bottom, Stoke have quite an even run-in when it comes to playing teams at the bottom and playing teams at the top. They've got teams like West Brom, they've got Leeds to play as well, so they've got the top 2 to play, but also teams at the bottom that are quite crucial, the likes of Wigan, Middlesbrough, Barnsley. They've got quite a lot of crucial games in there. As you can see from my predictions, I am expecting them to drop off a little bit. Came back from the break, drew 1-1 with Reading. Reading probably should have won that game. They won't go down, but they will do just enough to stay up. 19th place, I have Huddersfield. Once again, like Stoke and Charlton, I think they'll do just enough to survive. Was very surprised by their performance on the restart when they lost 2-0 to fellow relegation rivals Wigan. I was very, very surprised by that. They just didn't really get going. But Huddersfield's running. They've got quite a lot of teams around the mid-table range. They've got Reading, they've got Sheffield Wednesday, they've got Millwall to play. Nottingham Forest, I'm actually predicting them to go into the City Ground and get a point there, which is again quite an interesting statement. But I think Huddersfield, I think they'll be looking to put that defeat behind them. Obviously, Carl Grant's been fantastic for them this season. Janino Bakuna has been brilliant, and as well as some other players that they've took from loan as well, like Chris Willock and Emil Smith-Rowe. I think they'll definitely have quite a big impact on their side. I think they'll get a couple points and maybe a victory here and there. Moving on to 18th, and I've got Wigan Athletic. Now, Wigan hit form at the right time when lockdown happened and when the season stopped. They really hit form, and they've carried on that momentum onto the restart when, of course, they beat Huddersfield 2-0. Now, again, they're running. They've got quite a lot of teams at the bottom. Stoke, Hull, Barnsley and Charlton. They've all got to play. I think that realistically they'll be beating Hull. I think Hull have just been shocking. I've also predicted them to nick a win against Stoke as well. I think they'll draw with Charlton, but I think Barnsley will end quite a bad run of form that I've predicted them to go on and beat Wigan at home. So I think Wigan, with the form that they've had from before lockdown happened and carrying on that momentum through beating Huddersfield, I think they've done enough to survive as well. And finishing on the same points as Wigan, finishing in 17th is Middlesbrough. Now, this is quite an interesting one. Yesterday, as you saw, Middlesbrough did appoint Neil Warnock as their manager to replace Jonathan Woodgate. I have no idea how Woodgate was in charge of Borough for that long. But Neil Warnock, as we all know, notorious for his work in the Championship, obviously his work at Cardiff, and he knows how to keep teams up. The most infamous one that I can remember is when he took over Rotherham in 2015-16. They looked dead and buried, looking set to go down, and he managed to keep them up. He managed to get them on a decent run of form as well. Middlesbrough's return to action was a 3-0 thrashing at the hands of Swansea City. They were absolutely shocking in that game. But under Warnock, with a manager like him, I think Middlesbrough will have a resurgence. I think they'll have a revival of form. But the thing is, if he can't bring the best out of their squads and they keep playing the way they did, like they did against Swansea, they're going to be in serious trouble alongside Hull. And Middlesbrough do have to play Hull City, who are currently in the relegation zone, who they are level on points with. I am predicting Middlesbrough to win that game, and they've got a couple other teams down the bottom as well, a couple of teams at the top. But I think they're going to have a resurgence of form, pick up a decent results with Neil Warnock, and Warnock will steer them in the right direction. Now, this one's quite a controversial one, but in 16th, I have Queen's Park Rangers. Now, they've returned to Championship football not in the way that they'd hoped. They lost 1-0 to Barnsley, which, as I said, was quite a surprise to me. I didn't expect Barnsley to get the win there, but Mark Warburton has come out and said a couple of months ago saying like the season shouldn't carry on. They do obviously have some really good players that could cause threats. There's like Bright Osei, Samuel and Ebere Eze in particular, Jordan Hugo as well up top. They've got some good players in there, but I think compared to the other teams around them, I think they're going to start to die off. I think they're not going to get all too many results. With the way they looked against Barnsley, they didn't look all too good. But for me, I think QPR are going to start to die off a little bit. They're going to start to drop points here and there. They're going to start to fade away. In 15th place, I have Reading. Now, as you can see by the table, I'm actually predicting Reading and QPR to fade a little bit away from the playoff picture and actually come quite close to relegation. The gap between Reading and Charlton in 15th and 21st is separated by 7 points. So quite the close gap. But again, Reading for me, they're going to start to fade away a little bit. They have to play quite a lot of teams at the bottom. Middlesbrough, Huddersfield, Luton and Charlton at the bottom, as well as having to play the likes of Brentford, Blackburn and Swansea, who are gunning for promotion. Derby as well, who could be a late push for the playoffs as well. So they've got quite an even, slightly tough run-in. Of course, teams at the bottom will be looking to get wins against them. Obviously, they'll be looking to bring the best out of George Puskas. One player in particular who I think could be really good for them is Lucas João. I think he could really be a decent player for them, as well as John Swift, Rimanota in the midfield. Decent little players. Liam Moore in the backline as well. Rafael Cabral, arguably one of the most underrated goalkeepers in the league this season. Reading, for me, they'll be safe. They'll finish comfortably in mid-table. 14th, I have Sheffield Wednesday. Like a few other teams around the mid-table, I think Wednesday will actually be quite a tough team to beat after the restart. They drew 1-1 with Nottingham Forest on the opening day, which is a very good result for them. Again, they've got a few teams down at the bottom, a couple of teams around the mid-table range at the top as well. They've got like quite the mixture, it has to be said. But for me, I think Wednesday will actually be quite a tough side to beat. They've got, again, some good players. Kadeem Harris, Barry Bannon in particular have been quite a few standout players for them this season. Jacob Murphy as well. Very, very decent players going forward. Stephen Fletcher up top as well. For me, again, Wednesday will be safe, but I'd keep an eye on Wednesday, actually. I think they'll be quite an interesting team to watch, quite a tough team to beat this season, but I think they'll be comfortably in a mid-table spot. And just missing out on a top table finish is Derby County. Now, they returned to Championship action in pretty positive fashion. They beat Millwall 3-2 at the Den, which isn't an easy place to go to and get 3 points. Louis Sibley absolutely ran the show that game. What a little talent he was. Got a hat-trick. Derby have really produced some really good talents over this season. Some very young talents. Jason Knight as another one in particular. They've got some decent young talent. Sibley in particular, very calm, composed player on the ball. In particular, his second finish, the second goal was a really good goal. I watched a fair amount of that game as well, actually, and Derby looked really good on the ball. Again, like a few other of these sides, Derby could be a little underdog for the playoffs. Again, quite a tough side to beat, but for me, they're going to miss out. They're not going to finish in the top half of the table. They'll finish steadily in mid-table in what is, again, quite an inconsistent season for the Rams. Now we're getting to the top half of the table. In 12th place, I have Birmingham City. Now, despite the news going on with Pep Clotet stepping down and obviously things like that, and some people saying that that may have an effect on their side, but I think Birmingham will be a really tough team to beat come the restart. Again, like most teams, they have a lot of the bottom half of the table to play. Huddersfield, Stoke, Hull and Charlton still to play, as well as a couple of teams at the top like Swansea and Preston fighting for promotion. For me, though, I think Birmingham could make a late charge for the playoffs. They could well be within that mix. I think they're going to be a really difficult side to beat. Scott Hogan and Lucas Djukovic, probably one of the most underrated strike forces in the league at the moment. In particular, Scott Hogan. What a player he's been for Blues. He didn't really get going at Stoke, but he really has been fantastic. Of course, not to mention Jude Bellingham, the 16-year-old, who's been absolutely fantastic across the midfield. Bagged a couple goals, of course, under a lot of interest from Manchester United and Borussia Dortmund, but I think that he'll be putting that behind him for a little bit, and I think that he'll definitely be a decent player to help them out in pushing for a mid-table spot. I definitely think they'll get there. They'll be a very tough tie to beat. I've predicted them to beat teams like Charlton. I've predicted us to lose to them. I think they'll be a very decent team, and they'll build a decent foundation for their new manager to come in and take them in next season. In 11th place, I've gone with Bristol City. They are currently looking for a playoff position. They're currently in the hunt for a playoff position at the moment, but I can see Bristol City falling away from the playoff picture. They've got a few tough games to play on there. They've got a few teams at the top, a couple teams down at the bottom, but for me, I just can't see them getting playoffs, and I think they're going to finish bottom of this sort of, again, like a little mini league that's going on for the playoffs. But for me, Bristol City, I think they're just going to die away, kind of drop points here and there, and just fade away from the playoff push. I don't really think Lee Johnson's the man to take them forward and get them into a playoff position. And the same goes for Millwall as well. I think they're going to be another side that's kind of going to fade away from the playoff picture and sort of die off as well. I was speaking to a mate of mine over the weekend who's a Millwall fan, and he said that their performance against Derby, they looked really slow and tired, obviously, which is natural, of course, coming back from the first game. In 3 months, so sharpness will be quite low, but for most of the teams, but they'll of course be looking to build it up as the weeks go by. Millwall, for me, there's one thing I have with Millwall, and that is the fans not being there. Millwall fans, obviously being the 12th man, they are a very intimidating crowd, and they really do spur their team on. Without that atmosphere and without that intimidation, I can see Millwall being affected by that. I can see their squad affected by it. And judging by their performance against Derby, I think it will be quite tough. They definitely could be underdogs. They definitely could sneak in there. And they are capable of doing that. But I just can't see it. I can't see them doing it. I think they're just about going to miss out once again. But Gary Rowett, take nothing away from him. He definitely is a very, very solid manager. And I expect him to stay on next season and build a very solid foundation with them for next season to potentially kick on and get another playoff push or a solid, decent finish at the top half of the table. In 9th, I have Preston North End. Now, Preston currently sit in the playoff position, but for me, I think most Championship fans have put them to get playoffs, but I just don't think they will. I think, again, they're just going to die away and fall at the final hurdle and end up finishing further down the table. They did draw on the opening day to Luton, and they probably should have come away with the 3 points in that one. Their remaining home games, Nottingham Forest, Birmingham, Cardiff and Derby. Some really, really tough games in there. Not to mention Brentford and Sheffield Wednesday and Bristol City, who they have to play away from home. They really have got a tough run in with some teams down the mid-table and teams fighting for promotion. For me, compared to the other teams, I just can't see Preston getting it. I think they're just about going to miss out yet again. Wish Preston all the best though. I definitely think that they can get in there, but with it being so tight at the top of the table and with them drawing to Luton, it could potentially have a bit of a knock-on effect. I think that they're going to fall at the final hurdle. It will be very close, could even go down to the final day, but for me, I think Preston are just about going to miss out. Now in 7th and 8th, we have the two Welsh clubs. I think both of them are just going to miss out on a playoff push, but finishing worst of the two in 8th, I've gone with Swansea. I've got Swansea 8th and Cardiff in 7th. Swansea, for me, I think that they're going to have a really decent run end to the season. I've actually predicted them, as you can see from the scores, predicted them to go unbeaten in the next 4 games, to win the next 3 games in a row and get a draw against Birmingham. But after that, I think games like Leeds, Forest and Bristol City will be quite a tough match for them, and I've actually gone with them to lose that. I have predicted them to end strong with a win over Reading, but it won't be enough to achieve a playoff position. They absolutely hammered Middlesbrough on return to football, beating them 3-0. It was the Ryan Brewster show. He was absolutely incredible, and they've got some really good players that can help them out, like Brewster, Bursant Salina, they've got Kalulu, Ayew, Conor Gallagher, who will be a really entertaining player to watch, Joe Rodon and Freddie Woodman in goal as well. They've got some really good players that could help them out, but they're just going to miss out, and the same can be said for Cardiff as well. Cardiff beating Leeds on the return to football 2-0 in absolutely incredible result for Cardiff, and it definitely puts them in the hunt. But for me, I think they're only just going to miss out. That by all means they can do it, but for me, throughout the season they've lacked a out-and-out goal scorer. Lee Tomlin has been fantastic for them. They've lacked an out-and-out goal scorer. Robert Glatzel and Isaac Vassell haven't really been at their best this season. They've got a few goals to their name this season, in particular Glatzel, but they've not been as good compared to Tomlin. Tomlin's not even a striker, but they've been lacking that out-and-out striker. They've got a couple of teams down at the bottom like Hull and Charlton. They've got a decent little run in. I think that they'll definitely be within a shoe-in for the playoffs, and by all means I think that they can do it. But for me, they're just about going to miss out. Now we move on to the playoffs, and in 6th place is quite a wild card. Not many people have gone with these guys to finish in the playoffs, but I've gone with them. In 6th, I've gone with Blackburn. I've gone with Blackburn to make playoffs, which again is quite a statement. Not many people have really predicted them to go there, but honestly, I can see them just about sneaking in there. The job that Tony Mowbray has done this season has been absolutely phenomenal. Adam Armstrong has been exceptional for them, and he really did show that on the return to action when they absolutely hammered Bristol City 3-1. Blackburn, for me, they've got some tough games in there. They still have to play the top 2, but as you can see, I have predicted them to beat Leeds, which is quite the prediction, but I can actually back them to get there. Blackburn have been very good this season. Started off not great, but they definitely built their way up, and they're on a very good run of form, and I think that they're going to carry on that momentum and just grab that 6th place position. I don't think they'll go up, but I think that they will get playoffs. Best of luck to Blackburn, but yeah, I don't think many people have expected Blackburn to get playoffs. I don't think anyone has actually put Blackburn to finish in the playoffs, but I think they're going to do it. I'm backing them. I think they're going to do it. Now, the top 5 seem to be quite the way away from the rest of the table, so finishing in 5th place is Nottingham Forest. I think that a team like Forest, they tend to struggle against teams at the bottom, and they have got, again, like most of the teams at the top, some teams down at the bottom still to play. Stoke, Huddersfield and Barnsley, teams like that down at the bottom, Forest tend to struggle against sides like that, and they've got to play Preston, Swansea and Fulham, so they've got quite a tough run-in against sides like that. For me, Forest, playoffs, they've got that secured. I think they'll be absolutely fine with that, but I think that out of the top 5 out of the other 3 in the playoffs that are looking to get to the top 2, I think they're going to finish worse off that, but Sabri Lamucci really has been fantastic for them this season. In 4th, I've got Fulham. They obviously are still within, they still have a mathematical possibility of finishing in the top 2, and they definitely have the quality to do that with Mitrovic, Cavallero, Knockaert, Kearney, Dekorova, Reed. They've got some decent players in there, but based off their first game back against Brentford, losing 2-0, I just can't see them getting into that picture. Like Blackburn, they've still got to play the top 2, Leeds and West Brom. They've also got Cardiff to play as well. They've got a few teams at the top. They've got a couple of teams to play that are fighting for promotion. A couple of teams down at the bottom, like Wigan, they've still got to play, who I think they'll win. But yeah, for me, again, like Forest, I think they've got playoffs secured. They won't get top 2, but again, they could be a tough side to beat. Based on my prediction, they will have to play Forest, and that'll be quite an interesting game. Who would I back in that one? I personally would back Fulham for that one, but yeah, based off their performance against Brentford, I guess we'll see how it goes from there. They do have to play Leeds next on Saturday, which is a very, very tough game, and that will really get to see whether they are going to enter that top 2 picture or whether they're going to settle for playoffs. For me, I think they'll settle for playoffs. They'll get that comfortably. And in 3rd place, missing out on the top 2 by 3 points, is Brentford. If any team is going to sneak into the top 2 past Leeds and West Brom out of the teams fighting for the playoffs, it's Brentford. For me, I'm going to put this out here. I think Brentford are the best footballing side in the league that I've seen personally. When they came to the Valley, yes, they lost 1-0, but for me, they were absolutely brilliant. They were on quite a bad run of form at that point, but they were a brilliant side, and that really has shown throughout the season when they've had a massive shoot up across the table. Thomas Frank really has done a fantastic job for them this season, and on Brentford's day, if they want to smash a team apart, they can rip them a new one. Like, obviously, they beat Luton 7-0, which no one ever expected. They beat Sheffield Wednesday 5-0, which they really have torn apart teams. Their front three, Brian Mbeumo, Ollie Watkins and Saeed Benrahma, arguably the best attack in the division. I'm going to put that out there. And some other good talents like Tariq Fosu, Shandon Baptiste, Emiliano Marcondes, who got a goal and an assist against Fulham on their return, Josh Da Silva, Jensen, Pontus Jansson, David Raya. They've got some really, really good players in there. And as you can see, based off my predictions and the scores that I've given them, I think that they're just about going to miss out on the top 2. By all means, they can do it. I think they're the best footballing team in the division. That's my opinion. But I think that they're only just going to miss out. It's going to be tight. I do think they'll beat West Brom over the weekend, 2nd against 4th. A massive clash at the top. But for me, Brentford will come out on top in that one, and then that will be up to them to push on, to kick on, and try and get that top 2. They are capable of doing it, and I am going to back them to get promoted via the playoffs as well. I think that their chance to get to the Premier League is now. And now we move on to the top 2, and as you can see by the table, based off my score predictions, I've got the top 2 separated by goal difference. The title will be decided, in my opinion, on goal difference. Both Leeds and West Brom are on 90, but who have I got to win the league? Winning the Championship this season, I've got West Brom. I've gone with Leeds in 2nd just to miss out on the title by goal difference, which is very, very close. Obviously, over the weekend, when we saw Leeds lose to Cardiff, everyone was just thinking, surely not. Surely they're not going to bottle it again. But say what you want about Leeds, but it's about time they got promoted. They do deserve it. Marcelo Bielsa, what a manager. Absolutely fantastic. Stoke, Luton, Barnsley and Charlton down at the bottom. They still have to play. All of them I think they'll win emphatically, as well as getting wins against Fulham and Swansea. I think that they will slip up against Blackburn, as I said earlier. I do fancy Blackburn to get a cheeky little 1-0 win there. But Leeds, so many Leeds fans will be on the edge of their seats saying, okay, surely we've got to get promoted now. We can't bottle this now. They'll be on the edge of their seats, but don't worry, it will be your year this year. I think Leeds will definitely be going up, but they won't do it as champions. I've gone with West Brom to win the league, only just, but Slaven Bilic, what a brilliant job he's done with them as well. They've really had a very good season. Some brilliant players over the season. Sam Johnston, Semi Ajayi, Mateus Pereira, who's about to complete a permanent deal. He's an absolutely brilliant talent. Really, really good player this season. Arguably one of the best players in the entire league. But yeah, they've definitely got it within them to win the league. I think that they deserve it. It'll be quite a 2-horse race between them and Leeds. Brentford as well could enter the picture for the title as well. Like, as I've said, I predicted them to finish 3 points off it. But for me, I've gone with West Brom to do it. Only just, but they'll be going back to the Premier League. So that is it for this video, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, could you leave a like, subscribe if you're new around here, and turn on those post notifications so you're notified of when I post. What do you guys think of my predictions? Let me know in the comments below. If you think I'm completely wrong, then let me know why in the comments below. I think position-wise, I've got the league relatively spot on. There's a few questionable ones in there, but I think in terms of the points, for example, like in the relegation zone, I don't think it's going to be that far apart. Like Charlton definitely won't be 7 points clear by the end of the season. It will definitely be a lot more closer than that. It's going to be an interesting end to the season, but yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below about the rest of the season. This has been Tyler Renson. Have a nice day, and I'll see you all on Saturday for the live reaction between Charlton Athletic and Queen's Park Rangers. Take it easy, guys. See you later.